Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the Messengers in Our Home. Hello dear friends of Kardec Radio, and welcome back to the Messengers in Our Home. Tonight we're going to talk about chapter 37, Home Sanctuary. And as a reflection for all of us, I'd like to invite you to ask ourselves, is our home a sanctuary? Do we live in our homes as if it were a sanctuary? And are we treating our home like a sanctuary? And on the next level, what happens spiritually in our homes? Is it a rescue post for good spirits? Or are we, through our thoughts and behaviors, inviting spirits who are influencing us in a more negative way? That and much more we're going to discuss in tonight's chapter. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hi, Francisca. Hello, dear friends of Kardec Radio. Here we are back again with another chapter of the Messengers in Our Home.
And before we start, let's elevate our thoughts to the higher spheres, filling our hearts with gratitude towards God, our Creator. Dear Mother, Father God, we have no words to thank you really for all the blessings we receive in our lives, all the help, often invisible to us, to our physical eyes, that we get from our guardian angels and good spirits who are working on earth to help us all out who are struggling. We can't really understand you as supreme intelligence and your justice and love are concepts that we might grasp a little bit in theory, but please, God, help us to find the link into practicing your teachings by fulfilling your divine laws. And so we ask you once again to help us open our hearts and minds for tonight's teachings, but much more, each and every moment in our lives, so that we may become better, a bit more loving, a bit more charitable. And with your permission, we would like to start our meeting, and so be it. So, let's listen to the reading of chapter 37. Enjoy.
Chapter 37, In the Home Sanctuary. After the family worship service was over, one of our fellow spirits also gave thanks. Let us hope that these storehouses of sentiment increase, said Aniceto emotionally. The world may create new industries, build new skyscrapers, erect statues and cities, but without the blessings of the home, there will never be true happiness.
Blessed are those who cultivate peace in the home,
exclaimed a kindly woman who had been sitting with us during the meeting. 2 co-workers from Nosolar served us a simple light meal, which I cannot describe here for a lack of analogous terms. In workshops like this one, explained Aniceto, we can preserve the purity of our nutritional substances. In this sanctuary, the lower elements do not find an environment conducive to their proliferation. There is enough light here to neutralize any manifestation of the darkness. And while Isidoro's human family was partaking of a sparing meal of tea and toast in a nearby sitting room, we enjoyed our light repast intermixed with uplifting and healthy conversation. The environment continued animated and joyful. A little after 11 p.m., the widow retired with the children to their modest bedroom. The sensation of peace was impossible to describe. Aniceto, Vicente, and I went with some other friends to the small garden bordering the house. The velvety flowers were pleasantly scented. The spiritually clear ambience chased away the shadows of the night. Breathing the caressing breeze wafting from Guanabara Bay, I noticed for the first time a subtle phenomenon that I had never seen before. While her mother was conversing with a friend, a sweet little girl nonchalantly picked a fragrant carnation with a cry of joy. I saw her pick the flower and pull it from the stem, whereupon the material part of the carnation wilted almost at once. The woman scolded her.
"What have you done, Regina? We have no right to disturb the order of things. Don't do it again, my daughter. You've upset Mama."
Aniceto, smiling good-naturedly, discreetly explained.
"That is our sister Emilia, a worker from Nosolar. She has come to meet her still incarnate husband."
"Will he be coming here?" asked Vicente. "He will come through the doors of physical sleep. These occurrences happen in the physical realm by the thousands every night. For most incarnate brothers and sisters, sleep only reflects the physiological or emotional disturbances to which they have succumbed. However, there are a great many people who, with more or less precision, are capable of developing this sort of exchange between spirits." I was surprised. With its vast array of general services, this interesting place to which Aniceto had brought us made me intensely happy. I could foresee new activities around every corner. Although light surrounded us, I noticed that the skies were promising heavy showers soon. The light breezes were suddenly becoming strong winds. Nevertheless, the feelings of peace were extremely pleasant. "The wind on the earth's surface is always a heavenly blessing," remarked Aniceto succinctly. "We can surmise its divine character because of our current state. The atmospheric pressure on incarnates is approximately 15,000 kilos. But it's interesting to notice that we don't feel that much weight on our own shoulders," added Vicente. "It's the difference between the vehicles of manifestation," explained Aniceto. "That is, our bodies and those of our incarnate fellow spirits display an essential difference. Let's imagine the Earth's surface as an ocean of oxygen. Terrestrial individuals are heavy elements moving along the bottom of this ocean, whereas we spirits are drops of oil that can rise to the top without too much difficulty because of the quality of the matter we are made of." At this point in his explanation, I noticed that dark shapes, some of them monstrous, were prowling the street, looking for suitable shelter. I was appalled to see that several were heading in our direction. However, after a few steps they withdrew, frightened. They aroused the feeling of dread. Many looked like real animals wandering the streets. I must confess that an uncontrollable fear had invaded my heart. Calm as always, Aniceto reassured us. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "Whenever a storm threatens, roving beings from the darkness prowl about looking for shelter. They are ignorant spirits roaming the streets, enslaved to the strongest sensations of the physical senses. They are still clinging to the lowest aspects of earthly experience, and so the showers bother them as much as they would an ordinary person who was far from home. They like places of nighttime entertainment where idleness finds an outlet in debauchery. When these are not available, they enter open residences, since the physical plane maintains the same characteristic density. And showing interest in increasing the value of this moment's lesson, he added, "Notice how they start to head this way and then run away, frightened and disconcerted." We are reaping one more lesson regarding the effects of prayer. We will never be able to list all of its benefits. Every time someone prays in a home, there is a marked improvement in its ambience. Each prayer from the heart is an electromagnetic emission of comparative power. That is why the Gospel Home Worship Service is not just a study for inner illumination, but also an advanced means of outward defense because of the spiritual light surrounding it. Those who pray bear an impenetrable armor. The home that cultivates prayer becomes a fortress. Do you understand? The spirits of darkness experience a strong jolt when they come into contact with the luminous vibrations of this home sanctuary, and that is why they stay away and look for somewhere else to go to. We re-enter the blessed room of the modest residence. As if I were crossing a wonderland full of surprises, another incident aroused my profound amazement. Isidoro and Isabel approached us arm in arm, radiating happiness. That poor widow of this humble neighborhood was now beautifully dressed, in spite of the remarkable simplicity of her presence. She was smiling happily at her husband's side. She saw us and greeted us warmly.
"My friends, my husband and I are going on an instructive excursion tonight. I'm leaving our children with you for a few hours, and I thank you in advance for your care and attention." "Go, my daughter,"
replied an elderly woman.
"Let your body rest. Leave the children with us. Go in peace."
The couple left with looks of sublime commitment. Our guide leaned towards us and said, "Have you noticed how divine happiness expresses itself in the sleep of the righteous? I know of few incarnate souls with the good fortune of this admirable woman who has been able to learn the science of individual sacrifice." Translator's note: 15,000 kilos is the same as 33,000 pounds. And tonight we're talking about chapter 37 in the home sanctuary. And as of right now, we have just finished the family worship service, right, where Donna Isabel with her children, they were together reading parts of the gospel, reading some instructive messages, and they were discussing day-to-day stuff that happens and bringing those teachings to their own lives. There we also saw how Donna Isabel treats her different children, right, being more emphatic with ones, being more caring. Well, not that she was not caring when she was being very emphatic with her son, correct, but that she needs to be more stern with him because he is a more rebellious figure. With the other one, however, with the other ones, she would be more like a friend, right, just giving instructions. Why? Because they would understand her instructions and they would follow her instructions, knowing that she wants the best for her children. However, that is not to say that sometimes we don't need or we can't ask our father, our mother, something different. No, naturally, we may have our own opinions and we may have something to say also to make them reflect, which was not this case, right? The case that her son wanted to do was to destroy, and she was able to notice that. He wanted to destroy the place, well, to put it to rent, just to get money, and they would not be able to perform the home worship service again. And in this specific case here, we see how important that this specific space is for No Solar, for themselves as a family, and also for the spirits who are there being helped and re-energizing so that they can go on and keep doing and performing their jobs. To which Aniceto, after the end of the meeting, says and hopes that those types of houses, right, to which he calls storehouses of sentiment, right, that we may have more of these houses, more of these storehouses of sentiment all around the world, all around the city, because on the exterior, right, we keep creating new industries, build new skyscrapers, erect statues and cities, but, and then he makes us reflect upon this, but without the blessings of the home, there will never be true happiness. Why is that so? Right? I believe that it is not hard to understand that it is not the material life that brings us true happiness, right? It is natural that if we have a house, if we have new skyscrapers, if we have good cities, it will increase the quality of material life. But to what degree does this material wealth around us, material richness around us, really brings us happiness, right? How many people don't we see around being very rich, but then they keep looking for something that allows them to be happy and not to live just in exterior life, like a life just full of physical and material pleasures which don't fulfill them, right? So what Andre and what Aniceto is inviting us to think here is, how are our houses at this specific moment, right? Are we turning our houses into these storehouses of sentiment, right? And we already read the chapter, so we know what Aniceto is talking about here, right? Is about this fortress, and he will even use this word later on the chapter, this fortress where only the only ones who can enter are the ones who we can invite. There will be no bad spirits, trying, or maybe they try, but they will not be able to get into our homes if we pray, if we do our home worship service, if we really make efforts to turn our houses into these storehouses of love, of respect, of caring for the others, right? And there's this kind woman who was there with them in the meeting, and she says, "Blessed are those who cultivate peace in the home." Hopefully, we are being one. We are doing this at our own houses, at our own homes. Then, after the meeting, they go eat, the spirits and as well the family, right? But Andres says, well, there's no way for me to describe the food that we're going to have right now. He only says that it's a light meal, and it will also be a light meal for those who are incarnates, right? And maybe it's out of respect, right? Because the Dona Isabel and her children, right? We already know that they are not rich, that they don't have a lot of food. We discussed this in a few chapters in the past. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before that, but we discussed this. And they only have, and Andre describes it here, they only have a sparing meal of tea and toast, to which is also very interesting for us to think about, right? These days, when we think about nutrition and we think about the time when we go to bed, it's more and more common that we hear and that we see that going before bed. Well, I knew this, and probably everybody already knows this, correct? But it is important for us to go to bed having a light meal, right? Otherwise, it makes our body become heavier and heavier. So it's not bad that they only have a sparing meal of tea and toast. But what is also interesting about this conversation on food here is that Aniceto explains that in workshops like this one, like we are considering here, and Aniceto considers this home not only a home, but a place where these spirits, where he and his and all the spirits who are there can work to treat other spirits, right? They consider that place a workshop, and because of the spiritual environment, right? The good spiritual environment that they have at Dona Isabel's home, talking about the food that the discarnate spirits are going to have, Aniceto describes that they can preserve the purity of their nutritional substances. Why? Because there is no lower elements to, let's say, destroy, right, the good qualities of the food that they are going to have. So it is interesting as well that maybe also this kind of love environment that they are planting, right, that they are creating at Dona Isabel's house with her daughters, with her son, and herself as well, together with the group of spirits that are there, they are also helping their food to become so that they can enjoy more of that food and take more out of the amount of food and the type of food that they have, because there's not going to be any dense material or spiritual substances, right, to remove some of the good parts of the elements that they're about to take. So they all have good conversations there, and it all helps, right, with the meal, be it on the spiritual side, be it on the material side. If you want to know a little bit more about this problem of food and of nutrition, I would highly recommend you to go back to the book No Solar, and there are at least 3 chapters where they talk a little bit about the problem of food and nutrition there. The first chapter is chapter 9. Then you can find chapter 18. Well, I said 3, but these 2 are the ones that are really, really focused, or focus a little bit more about the food and nutrition, which is, again, chapters 9 and chapter 18. One is the problem of nutrition, which is chapter 9, and chapter 18 is love, food for the soul. So after this, they kept talking and, having healthy conversations. At about 11 p.m., the widow and the children went to bed so they could go to sleep. And then peace was impossible, right? The sensation of peace Andre describes, doesn't describe. He says it's impossible to describe how wonderful was that sensation of peace. So they went outside of the house to see the small garden, and then he describes the scents and how spiritually clear the environment was, and that they could see everything because of the spiritual light around that environment, right? And then Andre describes a scene that, as in his own words, he noticed for the first time something that he had never seen before. And then he goes to describe this woman who was talking with her friend while her daughter was looking at some flowers, a carnation specifically, and then she goes and grabs the carnation and cries of joy. So she picks the flower. When she does that, Andre keeps looking at the scene, and he sees that the material flower, right, wilts away, right, as if lost all of its energy, and then just dies right there. And the woman says to the girl, "What have you done? We have no right to disturb the order of things. Don't do it again, my daughter. You've upset Mama." Which is interesting for us to notice here is to know that maybe there are some things that happen in our lives or in nature that are still under control over the spirits. And naturally, if we don't know what we are doing, and that's the main lesson that I take out of this, is we have a woman, which is responsible, knows what she's doing, and then we have a child, right? She doesn't know what to do. Just like all child, she goes and touches things, picks things up. And what she did was she just took the vital part of a flower, and then that flower just lost its vitality. And isn't this the same to some degree that happens when we have a spiritual obsessor, right, that's around us and is acting like a child, right, disturbing and taking energies out of ourselves and making us feel sick, for example. And why does that happen? Naturally, we're not blaming the obsessor, right? We're saying that because we opened our doors, then the obsessor can come and enter our inner house and disturb our inner peace. So why would that be different with other parts of nature? Correct? So that's what happens when we don't know what we are doing. That's why it is so important for us to keep learning, to keep looking for knowledge and improving ourselves so that we get protection at all times through our own actions, through the protection of the good spirits who surround us, through the teachings that we keep learning and practicing, and so on and so forth. So we have no right, as she says here, to disturb the order of things. And aren't we all children, right? Aren't we all still kids, just like this young girl named Regina here? So it is very important for us to stop before taking things out of their natural order, so we don't know, if we don't know exactly what we are doing at that specific moment. And Aniceto smiles because he understands that she didn't do it for with an evil intention, right? She just did it because she didn't know what she was doing, to which is fine. And Aniceto describes that, well, that's Emilia. She's a worker from No Solar, and she has come here to meet her still incarnate husband. And Vicente asks, well, will he be coming here? And Aniceto says, well, he will come through the doors of physical sleep. And these occurrences happen in the physical realm by the thousands every night. What is interesting in what he says there is that he says that it's by the thousands. So when we think by the thousands, meaning that when we are sleeping, then we detach, we get more freedom, right? Our spirit, right? We as spirits are more free. We can go and visit other people, visit other spirits, visit other houses. And he says by the thousands. However, right after that he says, most incarnate brothers and sisters, right? So by the thousands we might have thought, hey, it's a lot of people. Yeah, but it's not the majority. Because for most incarnate brothers and sisters, sleep only reflects the physiological or emotional disturbances to which they have succumbed. What does that mean? It means that our bodies, right, our physical bodies, influence on our sleep. Well, we all know that, right? So that means that what we see during the day, what we manage through our lives during the day, will affect what we do when we are sleeping, right? And this sleep will reflect if we are not training to get a better night of sleep, to really be able to go out of our bodies, to visit other people, to receive visits from other people and actually remember something. It will not happen. Why? Because our bodies have a lot to say in our lives. We are incarnate spirits. We are not just spirits, right? So we have the influence of both sides of what we are. And by what we are, I mean what we are at this moment, right? Because in essence, what we are spirits. However, matter influences what I am right now. So let's say if I play video games the whole day, let's say everybody knows that game of Tetris, right? So if I play Tetris the whole day, it will make me, or some of us will definitely dream of Tetris when we are sleeping. Why? Because physically my body played Tetris, and my mind, my physical mind, my brain is full of that information. It is natural that I then dream of Tetris, dream about Tetris at night. And how can I do it differently? Well, depending on what I focus during the day may influence what I sleep and what I dream at night. That's what he says right after that, right? However, there are a great many people who, with more or less precision, are capable of developing this sort of exchange between spirits. So if we keep practicing, right, thinking of the good spirits, praying, asking to be released, asking to study, asking during our prayers, and in Spiritism we call this the intelligent sleep. Maybe I won't be able to remember when I wake up, because that's not a condition of the spirit. That's a situation that happens because of our bodies. Maybe I won't be able to remember, but it doesn't mean that I will not be able to do that, to go and visit other people, right? Visit our loved ones who already departed. So it is something that's really interesting for us to think about at this moment here in this story. And the more we go on with Andre, knowing these nuances and knowing about these services, we will see how much work we can do, right, in a workshop like this. And that's basically what Andre says here, that he could foresee new activities around every corner, right, using these abilities that we have, that we all have, be it while we are incarnates, be it while we are discarnates, because we have so many possibilities of learning, of increasing our knowledge, of helping others, right, to be happy and to treat whatever the needs they have at that specific moment. You remember that they were outside, right? And that's what he goes on to say, that, well, although the light surrounds us, he sees that maybe it's about to rain. Maybe it's about to rain to pour at that specific moment, because he says that light breezes are starting to become really strong winds. However, feelings of peace were extremely pleasant, which is really interesting for us to notice once again, right? We tend to see like a storm, right, a heavy downpour and strong winds sometimes as a reference to an inner storm, right, to movements of not being peaceful, to which he contrasts this, right? Although we are feeling strong winds and they're promising heavy showers, the feelings of peace were extremely pleasant. That is to say that peace is not something that's on the outside, peace is something that's on the inside. There may be a very calm, tranquil place, no strong winds. The atmosphere is very, very calm, very apparently peaceful. But then inside of myself, I may be desperate. I may be suffering for something. So it is not something that's on the exterior. It is something that's built from the inside. And then Aniceto remarks succinctly, right, that the wind on the earth's surface is always a heavenly blessing, as if saying to us, this wind, the wind that blows wherever they want, wherever it wants, it's always a blessing for us because it brings renewal to all of us. So in this case here, that's what the wind is. The wind is that renewal, that breath of renewal that always comes to us. And if we are trying and making an effort to build peace within ourselves, the wind will only help us. And then he goes on and says, we can surmise its divine character because of our current state. We can analyze, we can see it because of what we are. Because sometimes when we are incarnate, right, we have the pressure, the atmosphere, the pressure of the atmosphere above us. They say that's approximately 15,000 kilos. Well, maybe it was, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What he wants to say is that we have this external pressure, right, on us all the time. But Vicente comes and says, well, we're not feeling this here, discarnate. And then he says, well, it's the difference between being incarnate and not being incarnate. However, it is very interesting because right after this, Andres says that he noticed that there were some dark shapes. There were some people, some spirits, right? Some of monstrous faces. They were prowling the street. They were like running as if they were searching for a prey, which causes a lot of fear in Andre because he sees, and well, everybody sees, that these spirits are running in their direction. But Aniceto says, well, you don't have to be afraid. Because whenever a storm threatens, and now I'm reading here, roving beings from the darkness prowl about looking for shelter. They are ignorant spirits roaming the streets, enslaved to the strongest sensations of the physical senses. That's where I end the quote here. What is interesting that I was mentioning before is that, well, Vicente was saying, well, look, I'm not feeling that power or that pressure, right, as you are describing. And Aniceto was saying, well, it's because it's different from being incarnate and being discarnate. However, and that's what's interesting, it is not just because we are discarnate and discarnate. It is also because of what do we cling our existence to. These spirits, these low-order spirits, they are much more attached to the physical realm than Andre, Vicente, and Aniceto, for example. Why? Because they are planning and they are working on the spiritual side. The other spirits are enslaved to those feelings, to the feelings that they had when they were incarnate. So they are more, even though they are discarnate, they are more materialistic or more material than Andre, Vicente, and Aniceto, and all the workers of the workstation there. So, although it is interesting that it's because of the vehicles of manifestation, it is also because of what my mind is full of, right? So, what do I want to do with myself? So those spirits who are more attached, or as he says here, enslaved to these sensations of the physical senses, they will feel more attached, more closely linked to anything that happens in the material side of life. And that's what he goes on and says, right? They are still clinging to the lowest aspects of earthly experience, as on the contrary, Andre, Vicente, Aniceto, and the other ones that they didn't cite their names yet are not as attached to this side, but they are more keen to learn and to detach from matter, from the sensations of the body, to look for the sensations of the soul, right? To look for love, to look for redemption, instead of clinging to the idleness, instead of clinging to hatred, instead of clinging to this side that's more heavily dense. And Aniceto still goes on and says, these spirits, and this is a question for ourselves, right? To which side we are tending more to? This is a lesson on learning to know ourselves. He asks, or he says, they like places of nighttime entertainment. We could stop here, but if we stop here, it would not be fair, because it's not just about the nighttime entertainment, right? We can have healthy entertainment at night, but depends on how we do it. Then he says, where in these places where idleness finds an outlet in debauchery. So it is not being active, it is using our time just for simple idleness, not bringing a good conversation, not bringing something healthy to that place, but finding an outlet in debauchery, which is usually said when we indulge in sensual pleasures, right? Not being temperate, right? Having a lot of intemperance, and then just allowing ourselves to go down and down and down, losing all the virtues that we have, just to go down the pathway of pleasure because of pleasure only in itself. And what happens is, when those spirits were running towards Andre, they all of a sudden couldn't go further into the house. Why? Because the house was protected. Was it protected because there were spirits inside of the house? No. It was protected because of the amount of light that house generated. Due to what? Due to the love that inhabited that house. Due to the way Donna Isabel uses her house as this fortress, using the gospel homework, the gospel at home, right? The worship that they were doing creates this environment of protection from those spirits who will try to enter to get shelter from the water, from the elements on the outside, but they are not allowed to enter because they will bring disturbance. And in a fortress, you only allow to get inside the ones you know, and the ones you will be able to help at that specific moment, and not just everybody coming in to make whatever they want to do. So it is very interesting for us to know that and to understand that, so that we can really make more efforts to create a better fortress out of our own houses, out of our own homes. Aniceto naturally says this in a much more beautiful way than what I just said, when he says, for example, every time someone prays in a home, there is a marked improvement in its ambience. That is why the gospel home worship service is not just a study for inner illumination, but also an advanced means of outward defense because of the spiritual light surrounding it. Those who pray bear an impenetrable armor. The home that cultivates prayer becomes a fortress. I've been saying fortress a lot. It's because of this quote here exactly, right? When we pray, and when we pray together, and we've seen this so many times in No Solar and so many times here already in this book, that when we have a collective prayer, right, a lot of people praying together, we help, right, the place, we help the environment that we are to become more heavily protected from the disturbances that other spirits want to provoke at that specific moment. And then when it happens, Andres says that he was already surprised by a lot of stuff, but then something else happens and aroused his profound amazement, which is that Isidoro and Isabel approached them arm in arm. Well, Isidoro is a spirit that's discarnated, right? Isabel had just gone to sleep, but then she shows up together with Isidoro, right? And naturally, it is exactly what Aniceto was saying in the beginning of the chapter. Some people, right, train for this, pray for this, and act, right, in a way that they will be able to do this, to visit and to receive the visit of their loved ones and be able to go and do what they need to do together. And that's what's happening right now. She went to bed, she went to sleep, her children are already sleeping, and then she was able to detach from her body and finally meet Isidoro. And they are happy and smiling side by side when she says, quote, "My friends, my husband and I are going on an instructive excursion tonight. I'm leaving our children with you for a few hours, and I thank you in advance for your care and attention." To an elderly woman, says to her, "Go, my daughter, let your body rest, leave the children with us, go in peace." That's hard for me to even say something else, because this is so beautiful. This is so powerful to see that how hard it is to live a life just like Dona Isabel is living or was living at the time, while she is awakened. But then, when we know what and why we are doing that for, why, and understanding why we are going through those trials and tribulations, that is only temporary, that it has an objective, that it has a goal, that we are going through things for us to grow, that we are going through difficulties for us to learn, for us to improve, but also to help our people, to help this world to become a better place. If we really have this in mind, the light that we receive from that, it makes it all worth it, right? Makes it all powerful enough for us to, hey, it may be hard, it may be difficult, but it's worth it. It's worth the pain sometimes. It's worth the sacrifice. It's worth the time that I don't, quote unquote, have for myself, for my enlightenment, my personal enlightenment, my reading, or my this or my that. But if it is for a family, if it is for something that I really strongly believe in, the sleep of the righteous makes it all worth it. And what are we going to receive? How are we going to see this once we discarnate, having seen that my life was a pleasure, not maybe sometimes physically, but it was all made for this really, really deep state of happiness that I'm starting to create within myself by knowing and by doing what Jesus asked us to do. And I'm gonna finish tonight not saying words of myself, but by reading and hoping that you can really, really feel how powerful the example of Dona Isabel and of her bliss when she goes to sleep and finally meets her loving Isidoro, and having those moments of instruction, of love together, of companionship, knowing that although we may not feel the presence, the physical presence of that person, that I know that the person didn't die, that we are just separated temporarily. When Aniceto finalizes the chapter talking about the individual sacrifice that she does and how worth it is. And I'm going to just quote the end of the chapter, hoping to see you here next week on another chapter of The Messengers in our home, and also hoping that this is not a sacrifice for you, not for ourselves, to be here together. So let's hear Aniceto invite us to think about this individual sacrifice. He says, quote, "Have you noticed how divine happiness expresses itself in the sleep of the righteous? I know of few incarnate souls with the good fortune of this admirable woman who has been able to learn the science of individual sacrifice." Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.